You know that feeling, right? The steady tick-tock of time passing. It feels like one of the only real constants we have. But what if I told you that internal clock of yours is, well, it's surprisingly bendy? It turns out, especially under pressure, our whole perception of time can stretch, it can shrink, and it can warp in some really wild ways. Today, we're going to dive into the science that shows how emotions like fear and anxiety can literally change the speed of your world.
All right, so let's jump right in with a scenario that probably feels super familiar. It's almost a movie trope, something we all just kind of accept as true.
You've heard this a million times, right? Maybe you've even felt it. That in a moment of pure, immediate danger, everything just goes into slow motion. Seconds feel like minutes. You see every little detail with this impossible crystal clarity. It's a really powerful, common idea about how our brains deal with terrifying moments.
But is it really that simple? That any scary feeling makes time slow down? Well, researchers have started digging into this, and what they've found is a really crucial distinction that kind of changes the whole game. So to really get to the bottom of this, we have to understand something really important. From a scientific point of view, not all scary feelings are the same. In fact, the things we often just lump together are, neurologically speaking, totally different.
Now, in everyday chat, we probably use fear and anxiety interchangeably. But in neuroscience, they mean very, very different things. And believe me, this distinction is the absolute key to figuring out why our internal clock gets so warped.
Okay, here's a super simple way to think about it. Fear is the car speeding right at you. The threat is right there, you can see it, it's about to happen. Anxiety, on the other hand, is that nagging worry that a car might run a red light at any intersection you're about to cross. The threat isn't right in front of you. It's vague, unpredictable, and it might not even happen at all. See the difference? So how on earth do you test something like that in a lab? Well, some really clever researchers from University College London and the NIH designed a brilliant experiment to isolate the effect of anxiety, that vague, unpredictable threat, on how we perceive time. It sounds a little intense, I know, but the threat of shock method is actually a super common and totally safe way to induce a state of anxiety for a study. The participants know a mild, kind of annoying shock could come, but they have absolutely no idea when, and that creates the perfect storm of that diffuse, unpredictable worry we call anxiety. So the actual job the participants had to do was really straightforward. They'd see an image pop up on a screen for a little bit, and they just had to decide if it was on screen for a long time or a short time, based on examples they'd seen before. Easy, right? But the real trick was what was happening in the background. So just picture it. An image pops up, you make a quick judgment, you see if you were right. It seems simple, but the whole time, a part of your brain is buzzing with this one thought. Am I about to get shocked? And that, right there, is where everything changes. The whole experiment was basically split into two parts. You had the safe blocks, where people knew there was a 0% chance of a shock. They could just relax and focus on the task. But then you had the threat blocks, where they were told a shock could happen at any moment. The task itself didn't change, but their entire mental state, completely different. Okay, so you've got people doing this simple timing task, but half the time they're in this anxious state, just waiting for something bad to happen. So what did this incredibly clever setup actually tell us about how our brain keeps time? This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If you go by that whole car crash idea, you'd expect that being on edge would make time feel longer. You'd think they would overestimate how long the images were on screen. Makes sense, right? Well, that's not what happened, not even close. In this really stunning twist, the study found that anxiety consistently made people underestimate how much time had passed. The clock didn't slow down, it felt like it was in fast forward. Now, the nerdy measurement they used for this is called the bisection point. Just think of it as the tipping point where you're not sure if something felt short or long. And what they found was, for anxious people, that tipping point was way higher. An image had to physically stay on the screen for a longer amount of time before their brain would finally go, okay, yeah, that was long. Basically, their internal clock was running way too fast, making real-world time feel shorter. And the results were just crystal clear. For the exact same objective amount of time, people consistently felt like it was shorter when they were in that anxious, threat of shock state. And this wasn't some one-off fluke. Get this. The researchers confirmed this result not once, not twice, but in 3 completely separate experiments. This is a solid, reliable finding. That feeling of diffuse, unpredictable threat, anxiety, makes it feel like time is speeding up.
And just to cover all their bases, they also tried to test for that classic fear effect using predictable shocks. And what's really interesting is that in their setup, they actually couldn't get the time slowing down effect to happen, which just goes to show that whatever is going on with anxiety is a totally different beast.
Okay, so anxiety makes time speed up. That's a super fascinating piece of science, for sure. But what does it actually mean for us, in our everyday lives? Why should you care about this?
Well, the best explanation we have comes down to one thing: your attention. It's a limited resource. When you're faced with an immediate threat, real fear, it grabs all of your attention. Your brain is processing so much data about that threat that it's also processing more ticks of your internal clock. And that's what creates the slow motion effect. But anxiety is sneaky. It divides your attention. Part of you is trying to focus on what you're doing, but another part is always on the lookout for that vague threat. And because you're distracted, your brain literally misses some of its own internal clock ticks. The result? Time feels like it's just slipping away. So, what this all really boils down to is that our sense of time isn't set in stone at all. It's fragile. It's shaped by where we point our attention. This research gives us a really powerful way to understand what it actually feels like to live with an anxiety disorder. It helps explain why people might say an entire anxious week just felt like a blur, or why they feel like time is constantly rushing past them. It's because their attention is always being pulled away by worry, and their internal clock is paying the price.
And that kind of leaves us with a final big thought to chew on. We all feel anxiety, that low-grade, constant worry about work or money or the future. If that state of mind is literally speeding up your perception of your own life, what important moments, what details, what conversations are you rushing right past without ever even knowing you missed them?